I am now holding details in my hand. This Fox News obtained this document from the White House, and what is in it is it lists 24 refugees who had come from these 7 nations that have since been charged with terrorism. Some of them have been convicted. Let me bring in former director of the CIA, James Woolsey. And before we get to the whole point of whether any of this stands, why wasn't this then presented? Was it rushed so much? I'm just trying to understand why this would have been something for the Donald Trump side to say, hey, just look at this.
I don't know. I haven't seen the list, but I believe that the president is now on the strong side of these arguments, much as he's commander-in-chief with matters related to war and peace. I think with respect to who comes into the country, as long as his criteria are acceptable, I think he's on the winning side. He, in this case, for example, mentioned earlier, some months ago, that he might want to keep all Muslims out, and that, I think, would have been unconstitutional under the First Amendment. But he's changed and now is going to hold outside the country individuals from certain countries. And I think that could have been done more carefully. For example, a number of Iraqis have fought beside us against rebels in Iraq, and if somebody's fought side by side with us, I don't think we want to keep him out of the country. Same for permanent resident aliens, but some other people have to be.
Let me just tell you how complicated this list really now makes things, or goes to your point that President Trump may really be in the clear at this point. Here is one example of the people on the list that Fox obtained. An Iraqi native who served as a translator for the U.S. military was admitted to the U.S. through a special program for Iraqi translators and interpreters way back in May, subsequently became a naturalized U.S. citizen, was later sentenced to 4 years in prison for making false statements to the FBI, despite proof he pledged allegiance to ISIS. There's another one, a whole bunch of Somalis. A refugee who became a naturalized U.S. citizen, this was back in January of 2015, turned out he was providing material support to a foreign terrorist organization, Al-Shabaab. Then he tried to sneak across the border to Mexico and has been placed on the no-fly list. It just would have seemed to me that this list would have been game, set, match for this Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals saying, here's your evidence.
Well, this is a complicated subject, and I think one thing that got it off on the wrong foot was the president's staff announcing decisions right off the bat instead of taking several days to come up with a set of rules. For example, you can have different rules for permanent resident aliens, I think, than you are for someone who has been convicted of something illegal related to terrorism. So it's a complicated area, but I do think that now that he is going country by country, rather than trying to exclude Muslims, I think the president is on the stronger side of this rather complex debate.
Again, there's breaking news that we will not get a decision tonight, but maybe later in the week. Speaking of terrorism groups, there is word that the president is expected or is reviewing the possibility of naming both the Muslim Brotherhood and the entire Iranian Revolutionary Guard, their military, as terror organizations. What does that do? And when I ask that, could blacklisting either of these groups spark violence or, who knows, some type of military engagement with the U.S.?
Well, let's focus on the Revolutionary Guard for a moment. It is a terror organization. It owns a good deal of property, particularly military-related property in Iran. Its subsidiary, the Al-Quds Force, are the terrorist operators for Iran overseas. I think that the president would be entirely within his rights to name the Revolutionary Guard as terrorists. They are very definitely terrorists and should be, I think, treated as such.
And it's been proven that the Iranians supply Hezbollah with all kinds of weaponry, which then are used to attack Israel.
Absolutely. Hezbollah and other terrorist organizations, the Revolutionary Guard, are really the worst of the worst.
And then but you know, when it comes to the Muslim Brotherhood, Ted Cruz, the senator, had introduced a bill designating it as a terror group a while back, along with Mario Diaz-Balart. So there have been other efforts well before that to name the Muslim Brotherhood a terror organization. What does that do? Because, look, they have said, the Muslim Brotherhood has said, we will not be dominated. We will dominate our Islamist laws on the entire planet.
Now, this is a complex area, I think more complex than the Revolutionary Guard. You remember that we tried, the Congress tried back in the late 1940s to ban communists, ban communism in the United States, and the Supreme Court knocked that down, and they came back and passed something called the McCarran Act, which essentially made communists register. It was a complicated area, and I think the Muslim Brotherhood is a similarly complex subject. It deserves a more detailed discussion, and I'm afraid we have time for it here.
Listen, Ambassador, we always have time for you. We appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much.